Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Player 2 podcast. I'm your co-host, Rade and
And I am your co-host, Dave Leary. It is good to be back with you, Roddy. I have, in fact, survived the ice storm. We did not lose power. Amazingly, in Texas, the power grid held up. I'm not sure I could... We did make it. I'm not sure I can step outside my house without slipping on the ice still, but we're getting some melting in the next couple of days, so it should be okay.
I had a buddy out in Tennessee and outside of Nashville that just got hammered. He has a sloped driveway and there was like ice on it and he couldn't get out, and then he lost power too, but he had wood stove backup, so he was good.
Yeah, I have some relatives in Tennessee and they're in the same boat, but we will all recover. It's just a little snow and ice, so it'll be fine.
Yeah, ice sucks, so take that for what it's worth. Okay, so let's talk about news a little bit this week. Not a lot of big stuff in the game industry this week, but I think that's a good thing. You know, we had that big bomb last week with Ubisoft. It's a little bit quieter this week.
Yeah, a little follow-up to the Ubisoft thing. They did announce pushing a return to office policy 5 days a week, which is, in my opinion, probably the kind of soft layoff that will push some additional people out of that organization. So I imagine that's the intent behind that policy change.
So, you know, it's interesting. Like, my take on remote versus in person has shifted a bit, and it's continuing to shift. I'm working with a team right now that's fully remote, but they're distributed across a 9-hour time difference. And man, it'd just be really nice to be able to walk down the hall and ask somebody for something. But, you know, you learn to adapt and you can work with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think my position is still not shifted. A studio that is going to run remote needs to know how to do that and needs to spend some time doing it the right way. They can't just say, hey, we're all remote and it's going to be fine. You have to actually have your managers and people who are going to be running the procedures on that understand how to work remotely, support asynchronous communication, all that kind of good stuff.
Hey, one bit of news, and it'll tie into our topic a little bit this week, is I saw there's a pretty big class action lawsuit against Valve for taking too much revenue. This is in the UK, £656 million lawsuit. And so we'll see how that plays out. It was filed a way back, or about a year or so back, and it looks like it's going to move forward.
Yeah, this has been churning since 2024. Claim is stuff that you and I have talked about on the podcast before. Valve preventing publishers from selling things below Steam rates on other platforms and kind of locking users into their platform. It is similar to lawsuits happening in Britain against Apple and Google. I am not sure, even if you take the position that you've taken, Roddy, that cut is too high. I'm not sure legal action is the right answer to that, and I kind of have mixed feelings about this, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of there's two paths that in my experience legal action takes. There's the people that jump to it right off the bat, and then there's people that use it as a tool of last resort. And I kind of get the sense it's the latter in this one, but it's just something to watch out, because depending on what the decision is there, it could have ramifications to the business worldwide.
For sure.
All right. So before we get into it this week, want to remind everyone, hit like and subscribe if you're enjoying the podcast. It helps us out a lot. So we're starting this week a new series where we're going to kind of dive into challenges the games industry is facing, why that might be the case, and what might be a way for us to get out of this. And so we're going to start by talking from a financial perspective on the business side of games. And we've brought a guest this week, Laurent. He's a fractional CFO that I've worked with in the past. Welcome, Laurent.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today.
Hey, so let's start out. Explain to me and our audience what you do as a fractional CFO.
Sure. Well, big words, right? So fractional means that I'm working with multiple companies, multiple clients at the same time. And CFO means that I'm helping founders build their business with financial clarity and confidence. So what it means on a day-to-day is that I'm helping with the decision-making process. Why are you investing your next dollar, and what are you investing it in? What is the return that you're expecting? So it's kind of building this discipline on how to make sure that the money that you spend is spent wisely and follows the mission of the company. That's the overarching thing of what I do, working closely with founders. Then on a day-to-day, it's really about the cash. The amount of money that you can spend is finite. The number of things that you can spend it on is infinite. So how do you make these decisions?
When we've worked together in the past, it's very different than an accounting role, which is kind of looking at historical and make sure you understand where all the money went for tax filing. You're really about how do we operate the business and what can we afford to do going forward, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's multiple interpretation of what a CFO is depending on who you're talking to. The accounting world is, like you said, looking at the back and making sure that everything is in order. Very important, by the way, if you want to be investor ready. You need to make sure that all of that back office is ready to pass a data room or pass an investor scrutiny. I focus more on the future. What is the company supposed to look like in the future to achieve its goal, to achieve the mission that the founders have in their mind? So I help on that journey. So there's a lot of financial operations to get there, and that's where I spend the most time on, and that's what I love doing, is really working with passionate founders on how to help them build their business. Because a game company, a game studio, whatever you call it, is a business first and foremost.
The business, like we've talked about challenges the games industry is facing, and you're in a unique position because you're seeing multiple studios face some of the same problems. What are some of the common things that you're seeing?
The difficulty is to get money. So the path to start a studio is you can bootstrap it, or you can find money to help you start a business. A lot of companies start with the bootstrapping. They really try really hard until they reach a point where they cannot afford to build their business any further. So some manage to find ways to raise money, and raising money is a pretty big and broad topic. So is it money coming from venture capital? Is it money coming from a publisher? Is it money coming from a project financing? Is it money coming from debt? Are you a PC console story-driven gaming company, or are you a mobile free-to-play company? All of these components will have different answers. So there's no one answer fits all on how you fund your business, how do you fund your company to go forward. And there's multiple avenues to do that. The problem that all companies are facing is that there is a lot of money. Investors in general have been extremely picky about who do they want to give money to. Why? Because up to the 2020 era, the model was fairly simple and the gaming industry was very much on the rise. Then we hit the COVID phase where everything got completely crazy. There was a money spending frenzy everywhere. A lot of the investors that spend a lot of money on gaming companies at a high valuation burned their wings on that model and effectively could not find the return that they were expecting. The model wasn't working for them anymore, regardless of which way the money was spent and which type of investor that was. We came out of this period where money was hard to get because the return was hard to prove. And I think that's what we're still facing today. Now, I feel like things are shifting a bit where you see games like Arc Raiders, you see games like Clair Obscur, Expedition 33 that were not supposedly to be big successes, but they actually are a big success. So there's unexpected success, which gives hope to a lot of gaming developers. It's the complexity on how do you keep it on your feet. Keeping the example of Clair Obscur, because French company, I'm French, I love to talk about these guys and their game of the year, so it's an easy one to talk about. They very much struggle to put their game to completion. They bootstrapped, then they had to find a publisher. They were very smart in how to go to market, meaning that, and I'll return the question to both of you on how you think about launching a game, but building with a community and with connection with content creators has helped them a lot. Same for Arc Raiders and same for a lot of other games. So the model on how to take a game to market, how to fund a game, now are somewhat connected. Any investor is looking to de-risk their investment as much as possible, where pre-COVID, getting into COVID era, risk was not even a question. The interest rate was zero. They had to put money somewhere. There was a frenzy. They spent money. Today, they want to know, okay, what is the risk that I have with this investment? What is the return? It's hard for them to get a 10x return because nothing is for sure, but at least they can de-risk it as much as possible. And a way for them to de-risk it is, how do you go to market with your game? And building a community, having some pre-sales or having some very early on signs that a game could be a success is the best way to de-risk it, and it's the best way to attract investors.
Go ahead.
The way I looked at it is if you don't have a go-to-market strategy in your investment pitch, whether it's to a VC or a publisher, you're an easy no. Nobody's going to say yes to that. Doesn't matter how good the idea is. And there are points throughout that development. Registrations and signups while you're in early access are a great indicator if you get on their wish list of will this thing be successful. And in fact, we both know a gentleman who is doing a business, one of our former bosses, where they look at that as a key metric on how they choose to invest. But even backing up before that, if you've got a Discord community that's engaged and is showing that there's an audience for your product, sure, you're not going to convert 100% of them, but it's all, to your point, de-risking. You're showing your investors, hey, I have this thing and I have proof, quantifiable proof that people will want it. And that's powerful.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that's the way you're building as well. That's the way you approach the go-to-market process.
Yeah, for sure. There's one product that I'm working with right now, and the team is very good about doing early promotion and working with social media influencers to build awareness before launch. And it's interesting to see how that intersects with people that come from a more traditional games background, where that just seems foreign. It's like, well, no. You start the PR comms machine too early. You got to feed that beast. You don't want to flame out, but that's just how it is today. Like you can't 2 months or a month before launch start talking about your product. That's too late.
Which I think, is a segue to the big topic that a lot of people, there's two big topics that people talk about in the game industry. AI is number one and a half, but the first one is discoverability, right? There are so many games being shipped. If I recall properly, close to 20,000 games just on Steam alone. It's like, how do you stand out of the pack when there's so many games? And on top of that, we know that games are competing for attention, competing with Netflix, we're competing to any other type of media that exists out there. So that makes it even more difficult. So thinking about de-risking is how do we capture attention early on so that once we ship, the game is known. The game has already a pretty strong likelihood of success.
And you're saying publishers and investors are looking for that now from the developers. They're looking for a discoverability plan when you have your presentation.
Absolutely. It's really part of the pitch deck. And again, regardless of the type of game, mobile free-to-play, single-player, a PC console game, or multiplayer like an Arc Raiders. I would say for multiplayer, even more so, it is important to have a strong community. I think Battlefield also has been extremely good at that when they launched this one last year.
Those are some really great practical tips, building discoverability, building a community early. If you were working with a team that was a strong, good, independent team, say maybe 10 to 20 folks, they had a great game, they had a good prototype, they were ready to go find some additional funding for it. As the ground lays here in 2026, what would be your best kind of practical advice for them to go look for additional funding to finish the game?
So great question. A couple layers when answering this question. When you're looking for money, you need to understand which route you want to go. And I'm going to keep it simple. Do you want to go the publisher route or do you want to go the VC route? Just as an example. If you want to go the VC route, the complexity is scale. If you have a game, again, like Expedition 33, it's very different from a game like Arc Raiders. The revenue tail is completely different. The potential for scale is completely different. VCs right now pretty much walked away from single-player, story-driven games. It's rare to find a venture capital firm that will actually fund these games. There are some, not saying there's none, but there are very few. So the best way to attract these investors is usually what I talk about with founders is cold email, cold approach will be really hard. But if you know another founder that got funded by this VC, definitely connect with that person, definitely network so that this person introduces you to the VC. You have a higher likelihood of being heard, of being seen, because you're being vetted by somebody that is a success for that VC. And that advice is true for any company, by the way. On approaching VCs. But the VC money is very much now, when you look at the data, the market, is where game adjacent and platforms are going with, ad charge for mobile games, for instance, is a good example. There's always going to be a lot of money for platforms. Why? Because it's the traditional SaaS model. The scale is different. They're serving many companies. They are not just one company that has a higher risk of success or failure based on their game portfolio. They're helping the entire mobile industry, being apps or games. So these are very attractive. So they're what I call the gaming adjacent. They're very attractive to VCs because of the scale and the potential outcome. The other problem with VC money is the return. They need to make money at some point. So IPOs or M&A transactions tend to be and have always been the ways for companies to exit. We're seeing more now secondaries where founders, investors, employees can sell their shares to other investors. But the real path for an exit is a liquidity event. So either an M&A or an IPO. IPOs are none. Like Discord is the only one, and it's not even a gaming company, it's gaming adjacent. Epic might be the next one when they go public, but it's really hard to get an IPO nowadays. M&A are happening, but same. The gaming studios don't really have an incentive to sell their company now because the valuations are so low. The entire market is pretty low. So the economical environment doesn't make it very easy for VCs to actually get the return, the infamous X on their portfolio. This is really hard. So then the other avenues are outside of these are project financing or more traditionally publishers. And publishers, in my experience, have a harder time fund a project that is on concept, that hasn't started yet. They prefer to fund a game that is mid-course or towards the end of development because there is something to show. There is more than a vertical slice, so more than just a playable version of the game. There's more to show, and they love to see where this is going, because again, they risk this as much as possible to understand what is left and be able to help the game studio finish their project. So that's when I talk to founders, a lot of them really want to bootstrap as long as possible. And I think if possible, this is the best way to start, and then find a partner to finish the project, finish the game, to get to market.
So one of the things I've heard talking to a lot of other founders is exactly what you just said. Like there's almost no deal activity at the early stage, but it's almost always after there's some sort of signal, either from a playable demo or better yet, some early market signal that this thing might have traction. Interestingly, like I was looking at a report, I think you wrote this or shared it, about how the total dollars in the market last year for deals was actually pretty strong. It's just concentrated later in the development funnel.
Absolutely, yeah. There is money to be spent, but again, they put money where there's less risk. So when there's a large company that already has a proven track record of success that is looking to raise money, this company will have no problem raising money because they've proven it and they're strong enough. They're well known by the public. It's easier for these type of companies to raise money, and it always will be. And especially when you have already a pretty strong cap table with big name investors on your cap table, it makes it even easier to get money to raise your next round. Smaller companies have a harder time because they're not as known, as they probably don't have any prestigious names on their cap tables. But big names, big dollars are being spent in both the investment side and the acquisition side. We saw that with Niantic last year. It was like the largest since the Zynga acquisition a few years back. It was like the largest one. But on the smaller size deals, smaller size companies, not so much is happening.
What about smaller companies staffed with people who have fairly veteran resumes? We have a fair amount of that now as the industry has kind of shifted around. Does that carry any weight, or is it more about a de-risked pitch than it is about the people behind a product?
So very, very good question, because I'm being approached by a few veterans, like you described, veteran game developers or executive producers, and they're facing the same problem. They have the track record. They work with amazing team. They hired an amazing team, or on paper they hire because they don't have money to fund their project yet, but the team exists with amazing resumes and have a really hard time getting traction in raising money today for the same reason, is that there is absolutely no way to prove that this project will be of a higher success than another project today, even though you have the best resumes in the world. Again, there's always exception to the rules. So there's exception to what I said. And next Bungie, next Naughty Dog would probably have a higher likelihood of actually closing a round, and we've seen that in the past. That was up till the years 2020. Since then, it's been extremely difficult, and you can rarely see strong veteran game developers actually raising money on concept. It always has to be with some sort of a project that they could show, or an early development, so that they can show what they're doing, what they're going after, and what is the business model behind it. I think the key point is that business model. Again, a single player story-driven game will have a harder time getting funded than a free-to-play or a game with a long tail like an Arc Raiders. Even though there's a premium or small premium to purchase the game, there's a more likelihood of having a long tail and therefore a larger potential for the game. It is.
Which, I mean, certainly that makes me wonder a little bit about whether publishers and VCs are missing the forest for the trees a little bit. I mean, if I think about the last few years, some of the big successes in the business, Expedition 33, Baldur's Gate 3, I mean, these are games that are single player, forward facing, big bets, right? But they couldn't have been bootstrapped by a small team. These are pretty big games.
Correct.
So where's the next Baldur's Gate 3 or Expedition 33 going to come from in this world that we face in 2026?
So I think those two are different, right? Because Baldur's Gate is the third one, so the studio is known. There's been success before that. I think Sandfall and Expedition 33 actually started very, very small, and they stayed small, below 10 people for the longest time until they could actually find a publisher and grow. So I think over, 5 years of development, I would say maybe the first 2 or 3 years, probably there was a very, very small team, and they used all the tools that they could use, and they found all the ways they could make the game that they wanted at the lowest cost possible. I think the founder of that studio became very much a geek in using UE dev kits so that he could do it on his own. And for the longest time, I think he was making the game on his own until he could hire a co-founder, until he could hire a team and things like that. So I think using the tools that exist today are helping, based on what I've seen in my experience, are helping just to get to that first playable version, that very good concept of a game without having to hire too many people. And it's possibly what we see also in the indie space in general, because I tend to work with more indie developers these days. And some go, retro look, basic 2D game. Those are extremely successful. Those can, be extremely popular and extremely cost effective for also a very attractive price for the player.
You mentioned earlier about funding sources mentioning AI. I don't see, and this is why I've been so pro AI, I don't see how it's possible with these tools that exist now, these AI creation tools, to not use them to prototype and find the fun and prove out your game concept quickly and cheaply. It's basically like in an age of power tools saying, you know what? I want to go carve up some flint and chop down a tree, and I'm going to make a boat out of that. I'm like, yeah, go do that. Like, I'm going to go mill it up on my table saw and all this fun stuff and do it that way. And so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to ship with that stuff, but that to me feels like a game changer.
It does. And when you look at going back to companies being funded by VCs, when you look at the largest seed round, so we're talking about very, very early stage, so seed round for a game-related tool, I'm talking about Moonlake AI. I believe they raised a $120 million seed. And the concept for this company is you build a game based on a prompt. So I know it sounds crazy when we say it like that, but it might just happen. Why not being able to get started with a tool like that to create the game that you want, then you port it to the engine that you want, and then you build a team and a company around it. That's totally possible maybe in 5 to 10 years from now.
Do you think it's feasible? I mean, just the signal that it sends to investors, right? It's like, okay, I want to know that you're going to spend my money wisely. And if I knew you could have proved out something with $500,000, but you did it, you decided you didn't want to use those tools and you needed $2 million to use it, I'm going to be pretty upset as an investor if I hear that.
Yes, and I'm just going to segue a little bit on that because there is a lot of news in the past week about Gamvestor. I don't know if you heard about these guys. They're a new mixed hybrid crowdsourced and investor platform for gaming. So they're in Europe. I think it's a bunch of French guys again, but they're in Europe, and essentially they are building a bit of a hybrid of game publisher and funding. Players, you pitch your project, players give you some money for a pre-sale discounted price of the game. You get the money, you build your game, and so on. But they also have an investment arm within that, and that investment arm closely looks at your milestones. So are you hitting the milestones that you are promising? You hit a milestone, fine, you get the next check. You miss it, well, we have a problem. So I think that's also a way to de-risk in a way for some investors, meaning that they're not going to write you a $10 million check. They might just write you a 1 million. Come back in 3 months when you're done. Are we good? Yes, I'm giving you another 1 million, and so on. I'm just making up those numbers. But the idea would be to really have this stage gate green lighting process where the money is there if you prove that you can actually ship. And that's also a way to decrease the risk and still have very engaged investors and projects that maybe otherwise would not have been funded.
All right. So let's assume somebody's done everything right. They've got their product that they want to build. They managed to seek some funding. They're ready to go to market with this thing, and they've got a good plan, and they're going to launch. At that point, a lot of things could still go wrong for a product. So let's just assume that this is a good product. What are some of the common mistakes that you've seen developers make at that phase of the life cycle?
That's a good question, because I would say if you've made some mistakes, then the game just goes nowhere. So I think the signals are almost immediate. If the community that you've built is not strong enough, or the signals from the community are not strong enough that they actually will purchase the game, or they haven't, shown materializing the interest that they have, then you see that very, very quickly. So there's always going to be a risk, and the only time where you know if this risk happens or not is at launch, immediately. And we see that for all the games. So in a world where a game developer has done everything right, except there is unforeseen releases that are happening exactly at the same time as yours and are swallowing the market for you, the likelihood of failure is fairly low. Knowing that if the whole process has been done wisely, the expectation at launch should not be it's a slam dunk hit and we're going to sell 10 million at launch. It might be we are expecting 300,000 units at launch, but it might happen that you actually sell 500,000 units at launch and you're actually doing better. So I would say if there's a playbook, and there's no one playbook, every company is different, but if the playbook applied by the company that is trying to get the game to a success has a pretty low likelihood of not being successful if it's followed nicely. If there's hiccups along the way, then yes, it is likely going to fail. And that's where you see games that ship but are not final. If the game is extremely buggy at launch, that's obviously going to be a big problem. If the game can ship in good conditions, then it's one layer of complexity that you're taking out of the equation. Obviously, players are extremely picky about what they spend their money on, and I don't know how many companies have lived the Cyberpunk 2027 scenario, but hopefully very few, because that was a very painful one to watch, even though they became successful over time.
So if you're a developer and you're trying to navigate this, when and how should a developer engage with somebody like you on a project?
So it very much depends on the need. I work sometimes very, very early on where, let me step back. Let me tell you that there's really two types of gaming founders that I work with. There's the creative one that is not necessarily very business savvy. And there's going to be the very business savvy one that's a very busy person. So I work with both, and sometimes I come in at different stages. For the persona of a founder that is more creative and less business savvy, I can come in very early on because I can help in structuring the business. I can help in making sure that the company extends its longevity. It's not as hard as you think to extend runway by maybe sometimes 3 to 6 months based on just looking at sometimes the obvious thing that on how the business is operating. So I can come in pretty early on. And for these type of companies or founders, that's where I also work on during the fundraising process, when there is already a vertical slice or a demo that's good enough. And then you need to structure the entire process, coach the founder a little bit to make sure that they know how to talk to publishers, talk to investors, and increase the likelihood of success for that process. For the more business savvy founders, I found out that they actually spend way too much time on the business and not enough on the creative side of their game, working closer with their teams. So what I do, they know what I'm doing, so the plug and play is fairly easy. I just give them time. I give them back time that they could put on the business and less on worrying about the finance side. So the goal is the same, but the way to get there is different. And I would say I would come in more early for one type of founders and probably more on the later stage for another one.
We'll make sure to put your contact info in the comments. So any aspiring developers out there or actual people that are in the middle of this and need some help can figure out how to get a hold of you.
Perfect.
All right. This is a great time to pivot and talk about games of the week. As we've had a tradition so far, you're our third guest on, so you get to pick what game you want to talk about this week.
I'm going to talk about a game that I played over the holidays that I really loved for so many reasons. It's the Terminator 2D No Fate. Have you played this game?
Wow. Reaching back into the archives here, huh? A little bit?
It just came out, yes. It's
okay. Wait, maybe I'm thinking of something else.
No, it just
All right,
came
I'll
out.
have to look. Well, fill us in because I do not know about this.
So picture this. It's obviously a 2D game, 16-bit design. It retraces some of the most iconic moments of the movie through like an action-paced shooting game. And they also offer alternative path to the game, meaning alternative path to the story that don't exist in the movie that you can play through the game. And think about, I don't know if you remember back in the days, the Contra games where it's a platform plus shooting. So there's some element of that as well. This game is fantastic. The graphics are pixelized, but insanely good. I strongly recommend.
I think I just saw Roddy fall in love with what you're talking about. This seems like it would be right up your alley, Roddy.
This Contra comparison is spot on. Like if you just looked at it, it's that same style. It's Terminator 2D No Fate, came out on December 12th last year, which is why I missed it. I was deep into Arc Raiders at that point. This looks great. All right, I'm getting this.
That's a good pick.
And it's
excellent pick.
And it's short enough. It's typical arcade game. It's short enough, but a lot of replayability. It's fun.
How is it done? Do you know, since you're the finance guy, do you know if it's done well? Was that a good play for them?
Good question. I haven't seen a lot of numbers. It's hard to get numbers for these type of games. I just know the team has been very, very active with the community. Like I've known about this game for more than a year ago. And it's been on my radar since then. They haven't done any pre-orders. I don't think they've done any. Maybe they did wishlist on Steam, but I bought it on the Switch. But very, very much community-driven go-to-market. And I was the perfect target. They played with the nostalgia perfectly. The price was right. Even had a little discount, during the Christmas time. So everything was done flawlessly. I need to check how many units
sold one. I think you at least sold one more because I can see Roddy frantically pressing the buy button on this right away. I likely will too. It sounds like it would be a good time.
All right. This looks like, so I'm going to the DICE conference in a couple weeks. I'll see you there, Laurent. We'll have a beer or something. I'm going to buy this.
Does it play on Steam Deck? That's the question.
Yes, that's where I was going on this. I will be playing that on the flight out there. I've exhausted my games to play, so I'm either going to read a book, which is like so 1800, or I'm going to play this thing on my Steam Deck.
No, read a book on one leg and play the game on the way back or something like that. But I bet you can finish the game on your way there. It's an hour and a half, 2 hour playthrough. It's fairly short, but it's really good.
Perfect. I know what I'm doing.
Hey, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think there's a lot of good information here for folks, and it's been great to talk to you and get to know about what you do and get your insights.
And thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks a lot. All right, that's it, everyone. Remember, hit like and subscribe. Take a look at the comments if you need a CFO to help you out with your game projects. I cannot recommend Laurent enough. He's awesome to work with.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
Later.